The human starship Endurance drifted silently in orbit above Zerithia, a world that shimmered like liquid glass under the light of its three suns. The alien city below was a lattice of towers and spires, their surfaces rippling with bioluminescent patterns that pulsed like the heartbeat of the planet itself. Humans had been told to expect strangeness, but no words could prepare anyone for the beauty or the scale. Even seasoned diplomats and explorers found themselves holding their breath. Lieutenant Eric Callan, the human assigned to observe the alien culture, felt a surge of nervous excitement. He had trained for months to meet with the Zerithian leaders, to understand their protocols, and to follow their rules exactly. Yet, as he looked down at the city from the observation deck, he realized that the humans' natural adaptability was about to be tested in ways no one could predict. The Zerithians were a proud, precise species, renowned throughout the Galactic Alliance for their intelligence, their longevity, and their meticulous approach to science. Among them was Dr. Lyra Vesh, a leading biologist of her people. Lyra was chosen to participate in a new scientific experiment, a cultural and biological exchange between humans and Zerithians. The project was designed to test the theoretical limits of cross-species compatibility, a question that had fascinated scientists for decades. Though highly advanced in their own technology and biology, the Zerithians had failed repeatedly in attempts to crossbreed with other species. Humans were considered physically primitive by comparison. Lyra, however, was curious, driven not only by her scientific curiosity, but also by a desire to understand the mysterious resilience she sensed in humans. The first meeting between Eric and Lyra took place in the Alliance Hall, a vast structure suspended above the planet's surface by invisible force fields. Inside, the air hummed with a faint resonance that made every sound seem magnified and precise. Lyra approached Eric calmly, her movements fluid and confident, yet her violet eyes betrayed a spark of wonder. Humans were different, strong, unpredictable, and remarkably adaptive. "This experiment," Lyra began, speaking slowly in the shared galactic language, "is not merely about biology. It is a test of compatibility in ways our calculations cannot predict. We do not expect success. None of the previous attempts have succeeded even among species far closer to us than humans. If anything happens, it will be remarkable. Maybe that will help." He gave a small, self-deprecating smile, unsure if the alien would understand humor. Lyra tilted her head, considering him, then nodded slightly. The experiment itself was carefully regulated. Advanced medical devices monitored every physiological response, ensuring safety for both species. Though the process was technically controlled, it required the participants' cooperation and willingness to adapt to new circumstances, something humans excelled at without even realizing it. Eric, trained in both diplomacy and survival, followed instructions perfectly, but he also trusted his instincts. Lyra noticed this immediately, and it set her apart from previous subjects, who had relied solely on calculations and algorithms. Days passed as tests and observations continued. Eric demonstrated surprising biological resilience. His body responded quickly to environmental changes. His immune system neutralized minor pathogens that even the Zerithians found difficult to suppress, and his DNA appeared flexible in ways that confounded the alien scientists. Lyra recorded every detail meticulously, her fascination growing. Humans were exceptional, but not in the ways she had expected. It was not raw strength or advanced technology that set them apart. It was adaptability, their ability to survive, to respond, and to thrive in situations that would cripple other species. One evening, Lyra spoke candidly. "Your species, it is unlike anything we predicted. I expected chaos, error, failure. Yet you respond as though you were built for this." Eric, sitting quietly, watched her reaction. Humans had always prided themselves on their ingenuity, but hearing it confirmed by an alien biologist of Lyra's stature was humbling. The next stage of the experiment involved a simulation designed to test reproductive compatibility at a cellular level. Normally, this stage was theoretical for most species, because the cellular barriers were nearly insurmountable. Human and Zerithian DNA were considered too distant, incompatible for any meaningful fusion. The laboratory was filled with screens displaying molecular interactions, and the room was quiet except for the soft hum of advanced machinery. To everyone's astonishment, the preliminary cellular tests showed a positive reaction. The human cells demonstrated an unprecedented ability to interact with Zorithian cells, forming stable bonds without error. The chief Zorithian scientist, an elder named Vashir, frowned, muttering to himself in disbelief. Impossible! This should not occur. She turned to Eric. You are biologically extraordinary. This is not just luck. Your species has a form of resilience we have never seen. Eric shrugged modestly. I just survive, he said simply. It was that simplicity, Lyra realized, that made humans dangerous, not in violence or conquest, but in survival, in persistence, in their ability to turn impossibility into reality. Weeks passed. The experiment continued under strict observation. No one dared speak of the potential implications yet because the discovery could destabilize interstellar politics. Yet the data continued to confirm the unexpected. The cells were thriving. The early reproductive simulations were stable. The human factor was not only compatible, it was unusually efficient. Lyra struggled with her own emotions. Her culture considered conception sacred, rare, and almost untouchable. The fact that a human male could interact at a fundamental biological level was unsettling. She had never expected a human to surpass the limits of theory so completely. She found herself both curious and uneasy, questioning her own understanding of biology. Could humans be the key to evolutionary solutions her species had been chasing for centuries? Meanwhile, Eric remained focused but unaware of the storm his presence was causing. Humans were used to underestimation. They thrived on it. It was almost like a game. Every test, every observation, every calculation only confirmed one thing: humans survived where others failed. And in this strange alien laboratory, surrounded by species that prided themselves on perfection, Eric was doing what humans did best: adapting, enduring, and exceeding expectations without even trying. Finally, the critical day arrived. Medical scans indicated the presence of early reproductive activity, something that should have been impossible. Lyra's eyes widened as she confirmed the data. It is occurring, she whispered. She double-checked her instruments, afraid she had misread the results, but the readings were consistent. Human and Zorithian biology had interacted successfully. Against every known law, a pregnancy was confirmed. The laboratory erupted into cautious excitement. The council of scientists gathered, whispering and arguing over the implications. Some feared political backlash. Others worried about ethical consequences. Yet all agreed on one thing: humanity had proven something profound. It was not brute force, technology, or aggression. It was something subtler, deeper, and more enduring: the human capacity to survive, adapt, and thrive even in environments and systems that should have defeated them. Lyra herself was quiet, absorbing the reality. She looked at Eric and realized that the humans she had studied so meticulously, the species she had approached with scientific detachment, were not ordinary. There was an unpredictability, a resilience, and a raw ingenuity that even her advanced calculations could not account for. Humans were, in a sense, perfectly suited for survival in ways her people could not match. That evening, as the sun set over Zorithia, casting long streaks of pink and gold across the city, Lyra walked alone through the observation gardens. She touched the petals of alien plants, marveling at their symmetry and fragility. And yet, she thought, none of these marvels compared to the strength she had just witnessed. The human beside her was ordinary in appearance, but extraordinary in essence. That realization filled her with awe and unease. The news of the successful interaction could not yet be shared widely. The council decided to keep it under strict observation, fearing panic or envy from other species. Lyra and Eric continued their work, their every step now carrying the weight of potential history. It was no longer just a scientific experiment. It was the beginning of a revelation that humans were not merely participants in the Galactic Alliance, but potential catalysts for its next evolution. And so, the first chapter of an unprecedented event in galactic history closed. The human male, quiet and unassuming, had done what no other species could. And the alien woman, brilliant and cautious, had witnessed something she never thought possible: that humanity, in its simple persistence, could rewrite the rules of life itself. As night fell on Zorithia, Eric gazed at the city lights below, unaware of the full impact of his presence. Lyra stood beside him, silent, watching him with a mixture of curiosity and awe. Somewhere deep in the structure of the universe, a line had been crossed. And in crossing it, humans had reminded the galaxy why they were never to be underestimated. The news of the unprecedented human Zorithian reproductive success spread slowly at first. confined to the top scientific councils of the alien civilization. Yet even in secrecy, its impact was immediate and profound. Lyra Vesh found herself summoned repeatedly to explain the results, and every session left her both exhilarated and uneasy. The reactions of her fellow Zorithians were a mixture of awe, fear, and disbelief. How could a species so young, and by their standards, primitive, accomplish what no other had managed in millennia? The human male, Lieutenant Eric Callan, remained largely unaware of the ripple effects. He continued his duties aboard the Endurance, observing, learning, and interacting with the Zorithians under strict protocols. Yet in every interaction, he carried an unspoken strength, a quiet confidence rooted in the human ability to adapt. The Zorithians noticed it, some openly, some in subtle ways, but they could not quantify it. It was not something that could be measured in equations or simulations. Within the Alien Scientific Council, debate raged. Elder Vashir, the chief scientist, called an emergency session. The chamber was a vast circular room filled with translucent consoles and hovering data spheres, each displaying streams of genetic information, medical scans, and complex simulations. The council members were tense. Their voices, when raised, resonated through the chamber with an unusual intensity. "This cannot be ignored," Vashir said, his voice trembling slightly, though he tried to maintain authority. "Our species has studied genetic interaction for millennia. Human biology should be incompatible. Yet the data," he gestured to the holographic projections hovering above the central platform, "shows otherwise. Our calculations fail at every turn. This is not error. This is anomaly. That is sacred. The cellular barriers are deliberate. They protect our species. If humans can bypass them, even partially, what does that mean for our future? This is not simple compatibility. It is superiority in certain respects." Meanwhile, Eric continued to interact with Zorithian researchers, unaware of the growing tension. He observed their habits, their careful routines, and their complex communication methods. Despite the vast differences, he noticed patterns, rules that, if understood, could be used to navigate their society effectively. Humans had always excelled at this. Adaptation was not just biological, it was cultural, emotional, and tactical. Lyra began to realize that she was becoming personally invested in the human presence. It was dangerous to feel admiration in her culture. Attachment could cloud judgment. Yet she could not deny the truth. Humans were remarkable, not just in body, but in mind and spirit. The more she studied Eric and his colleagues, the more she understood why humanity had survived against impossible odds on Earth. They had faced disasters, predators, and environmental extremes, and yet they thrived. Now, in the alien laboratories of Zorithia, they were demonstrating the same principle on a universal scale. The political implications were not slow to emerge. Even among allied species, whispers began to circulate. If humans were capable of cross-species reproduction in ways no one else could, they could become a focal point for both admiration and fear. Some factions argued that humans should be isolated, monitored, or even restricted. Others saw an opportunity to study, learn, and perhaps even emulate the traits that allowed them to succeed. Lyra struggled with these conversations. She knew that the human perspective was fundamentally different. Humans did not seek domination for its own sake. They did not covet control for status alone. What they did possess was resilience, ingenuity, and a moral compass that often guided them toward cooperation rather than conquest. If only her council could understand this. One day, during a routine observation session, Lyra and Eric were reviewing the latest data on cellular development. The fetus, still in its earliest stages, was stable beyond any expectation. Lyra's hand hovered over the controls, reluctant to touch the projections. "It is stable," she whispered, almost to herself. "The growth rate is consistent, no anomalies. Nothing we have seen before. I guess we humans are good at surviving," he said lightly, trying to keep the mood calm. "We don't always know how, but we do it anyway." She realized then that this quality, the adaptability, the resilience, was something her people lacked. They had perfected structure and precision, but when faced with true uncertainty, their biology faltered. Humans, she realized, thrived in uncertainty. As the days turned into weeks, the council's debates intensified. Some members demanded secrecy, fearing panic among allied species. Others argued for full disclosure, believing the discovery could strengthen interstellar cooperation. Lyra was caught in the middle. She knew that revealing the full implications of the human-Zorithian interaction could reshape alliances, cultures, and even the way species viewed reproduction itself. During one council session, Elder Vashir addressed the group with rare urgency. "We must consider the political consequences," he said. "Humans have demonstrated a capability that none of us anticipated. If this becomes widely known, other species will react. Some may try to emulate them. Others may attempt to suppress them. We cannot ignore the risk. Humans are not a threat in the conventional way. Their strength is subtle. It is persistence, adaptability, and cooperation. If we approach this with fear, we will fail to understand them, and we may squander the opportunity to learn from them." Zorithians prided themselves on rational thought, yet the human's presence had created an emotional response no calculation could fully explain. Outside the council chambers, Lyra often found herself walking among the observation gardens, reflecting on the humans' nature. Eric's calm confidence, his focus under pressure, and his unassuming intelligence all contrasted sharply with the meticulous perfection of her species. Humans were messy in appearance, impulsive in behavior, yet astonishingly effective when the situation demanded it. The alien world seemed ordered, precise, almost fragile, while humans carried chaos and chance and still emerged unharmed. The strain of secrecy grew heavier as the council deliberated. Scientists from other species were being briefed under strict protocols, yet curiosity and envy spread like wildfire. Every conversation hinted at the same question: what made humans special? And if one human could succeed where others failed, could all humans replicate that success? Meanwhile, Eric remained focused on learning the alien society. He noticed subtle patterns in Zorithian behavior, rituals of attention, protocols of conversation, and intricate social signals. Humans excelled at observing, interpreting, and adapting. In a short time, he had gained the trust of key researchers, not through force or dominance, but by understanding, respecting, and navigating the alien social systems. It was exactly this combination of observation and adaptability that had allowed his species to survive on Earth for millennia. Lyra, witnessing this, began to understand why humans had endured on their homeworlds. It was not technology or firepower that gave them advantage. It was their capacity to respond, to adapt, and to thrive in environments that should have defeated them. In the controlled environment of Zorithia, the same principle was now visible at a cellular level. Humans were resilient not only externally, but internally. Their biology, their minds, and their instincts all worked together in a harmony that her people had never seen. As the weeks passed, whispers of the experiment reached other corners of the Alliance, though carefully managed to prevent panic. The humans' success became a subject of fascination, debate, and speculation. Some feared that the ability to interact with alien biology might give humans influence that no one else possessed. Others recognized the opportunity for unprecedented cooperation and learning. Lyra remained caught in the middle, witnessing the tension between fear and admiration that humanity naturally provoked. One night, as the three sons of Zorithia sat behind the shimmering towers of the city, Lyra stood alone on a balcony overlooking the observation gardens. She touched the petals of alien flowers that glowed softly in the dim light. Somewhere deep inside, she realized that the human male she worked with had done more than participate in a scientific experiment. He had revealed a truth her species had ignored for centuries, that adaptability, persistence, and resilience were as important as intelligence or precision. Humans were not weak, and they were not primitive. They were extraordinary in ways that defied conventional measurement. And in that moment, Lyra understood that the galaxy itself might soon have to recognize this truth. The shockwaves of what had begun in a small laboratory would ripple through civilizations, politics, and biology alike. Humanity had demonstrated that survival was not a matter of rules or calculations. It was a matter of essence. And the essence of humans, Lyra realized with awe and trepidation, was something no one could predict, control, or underestimate. The stage was set. The human presence on Zorithia was no longer a minor experiment. It was the beginning of a revelation that would challenge assumptions, shift alliances, and force every species in the galaxy to confront the reality that humans were not to be dismissed lightly. And somewhere deep in her mind, Lyra felt a mixture of excitement, fear, and wonder, knowing that the story of humanity was just beginning to unfold. The weeks following the revelation of the human Zorithian pregnancy were filled with tension, curiosity, and quiet marvel. On Zorithia, the alien laboratories that had once thrummed with calm, methodical precision were now alive with an unusual energy. Scientists from across the galaxy quietly arrived under invitation or demand, each hoping to study the unprecedented phenomenon. Some came with admiration, eager to learn from humans. Others arrived with suspicion, questioning whether humanity's adaptability might threaten the delicate balance of interstellar relations. Lyra Vesh found herself at the center of it all. She moved through the laboratories with careful grace, her violet eyes scanning every console, every holographic display, every calculation. Even now, she could hardly believe what was happening. Humans, whom her people had once dismissed as biologically inferior, had achieved something that none of the galaxy's most advanced species had managed. Her people had calculated, simulated, and experimented for centuries, yet a single human had succeeded effortlessly where thousands of her peers had failed. Eric Callan remained focused, observing the alien culture and participating in the experiments as instructed. Unlike some of the visiting scientists, he did not seek recognition, nor did he boast. Humans were accustomed to underestimation. It was a survival trait, and Eric, as usual, relied on instinct as much as training. He paid attention to details others overlooked, the subtle cues in Zorithian communication, the rhythms of their social interactions, and the unspoken rules of hierarchy. It was, in its own quiet way, a demonstration of human adaptability, the same trait that had impressed Lyra and the Council so deeply. One afternoon, Lyra and Eric were reviewing cellular scans in a chamber bathed in soft blue light. The projected holograms displayed the interactions between human and Zorithian cells, a delicate dance of molecules that should have been incompatible. And yet, there they were, stable, synchronized, and growing steadily. Lyra's hand hovered over the controls, her mind racing to understand the implications. "Your cells," she said quietly, "do something our calculations cannot explain. They adjust, compensate, and stabilize where we would see errors, collapse, or failure. It is remarkable." Lyra allowed a small smile. "It is more than good. It is extraordinary. You humans are not just surviving here. You are thriving in ways we cannot predict." The aliens' pride in their calculations, their meticulous planning, and their long experience suddenly seemed brittle compared to the quiet, flexible resilience of a single human species. Discussions became heated as council members debated what to do. Some argued for extreme caution. "We cannot risk the galaxy perceiving humans as superior," said one senior researcher, her voice trembling with a mixture of fear and indignation. "If others learn that humans can succeed biologically where we fail, it could destabilize alliances, provoke envy, or worse, fear. Their biology, their adaptability, their instincts. This is knowledge the galaxy cannot afford to ignore. Humans are a living experiment of survival perfected over millennia. We would be fools to dismiss it." She understood the danger, yet she could not ignore the truth. Humans were extraordinary, not through brute force or cunning, but through persistence, flexibility, and intelligence. The more she observed Eric and his species, the more she realized that their survival skills extended far beyond biology. Humans adapted culturally, emotionally, and strategically. They understood nuance. They understood risk, and above all, they endured. The alien woman also began to notice a subtle cultural difference. Whereas Zorithians approached life with precision and predictability, humans embraced imperfection. They learned from mistakes. They improvised when protocols failed. In the controlled laboratory, this translated into a quiet confidence that was impossible to teach. Eric did not manipulate the experiments or override the scientists' instructions. He simply observed, adapted, and responded. It was as if his species instinctively recognized the limitations of theory and found ways to thrive despite them. This revelation was both thrilling and disconcerting for Lyra. She had been raised to revere order, precision, and control. Yet here was a species whose success depended not on control but on flexibility. It challenged everything she had believed. More than that, it sparked something new, admiration. She found herself drawn to the humans' simple determination, their ability to persist when the odds seemed impossible. It was a quiet kind of strength, and it left her feeling both unsettled and inspired. Meanwhile, across the galaxy, other species began to take notice. Rumors of the human-Zorithian interaction spread through diplomatic channels, sometimes exaggerated, sometimes distorted. Some claimed that humans had achieved a miracle, others whispered that they posed a biological threat. Lyra could see the tension building. If left unchecked, fear could lead to hostility. Yet the humans themselves were unaware of the full magnitude of the attention they were attracting. Back in the laboratory, Eric noticed changes in Lyra's behavior. She asked more questions, spent more time observing humans, and seemed less certain in her own calculations. He had learned to read subtle cues from other species, and he understood that admiration, though alien to Zorithian culture, was present. "You seem interested in more than just the data," he said lightly, half-joking. Lyra paused, then smiled faintly. "Perhaps I am," she admitted, "but it is not personal, it is curiosity. Humans operate in ways I do not fully understand, yet they succeed where others fail. That is remarkable. That demands attention." Every new cellular interaction confirmed what she had already suspected. Human biology was extraordinary. It adapted, adjusted, and thrived in ways her species could not replicate. And the human male, unassuming and calm, was the catalyst. The political stakes grew higher as well. The Zorithian Council debated whether to restrict access to the experiment, fearing that other species might attempt to intervene, replicate, or exploit the discovery. Lyra argued for measured transparency. "We cannot hide knowledge indefinitely," she said. "Humans are not a threat if approached ethically. Their resilience is a lesson, not a weapon. If we try to suppress it, we risk misunderstanding and possibly disaster." The laboratory became a hub of intellectual activity, but beneath the structured experimentation lay an unspoken tension. Everyone knew that humans were different, and that difference carried power. Outside the laboratory, Eric continued to navigate Zorithian society with quiet skill. He learned their customs, respected their rules, and quietly adapted to subtle social pressures. Humans were excellent at this, he realized, because they had been forced to adapt to countless unpredictable challenges on their own world. Survival demanded observation, understanding, and responsiveness. The galaxy, Lyra realized, had underestimated these traits. One evening, as the suns dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows over the alien city, Lyra and Eric walked through the observation gardens. The air was thick with the scent of luminescent flora, the gentle hum of alien machinery blending with the natural sounds of the city. Lyra paused to touch a flower, its petals glowing softly in the twilight. "Your people, they survive," she said quietly, almost to herself. "Not because you are stronger or faster or smarter. You survive because you endure, you adapt, you persist. I have never seen anything like it." She realized that the truth of humanity could not be contained by science alone. It was cultural, emotional, instinctual. It was the quiet determination to continue, to endure, to thrive where others might falter. And now, through the lens of biology and observation, she saw it in a way that her species had never encountered before. The weeks turned into months, and the hybrid continued to develop steadily. The alien woman's fascination deepened, blending scientific curiosity with a rare personal attachment. She watched as human adaptability influenced the environment around them. Simple observations, how Eric handled unfamiliar equipment, navigated social protocols, and responded to stress, revealed principles that her species had overlooked. Humans thrived not by avoiding danger or uncertainty, but by confronting it with resourcefulness and resilience. In quiet moments, Lyra reflected on what this meant for the galaxy. Humanity's presence was no longer a minor experiment. It was a revelation. If other species could recognize and learn from humans' adaptability, cooperation, and resilience, the consequences could reshape alliances, diplomacy, and even the understanding of life itself. Yet the same traits that made humans extraordinary could also provoke fear. Many species would struggle to comprehend a civilization capable of thriving in ways no one expected. Lyra understood that her role was crucial. She was the bridge between humans and the alien council, the observer, the advocate, and sometimes the interpreter of human qualities her peers could not perceive. Her fascination with Eric and his species was tempered by her duty, yet she could not ignore the truth she had witnessed. Humans were extraordinary. Their resilience, ingenuity, and adaptability were forces that could not be measured or constrained. And so, the galaxy began to stir with quiet tension and cautious fascination. The humans' success was no longer confined to a laboratory. It was becoming a symbol, a proof of principle, and a challenge to assumptions long held by countless civilizations. The alien woman, brilliant and cautious, found herself increasingly captivated by the humans' quiet strength, their unassuming confidence, and their ability to thrive against impossible odds. The stage was set for even greater revelations. Humanity had shown that survival was not a matter of rules or calculations, it was a matter of essence. And the galaxy, slowly and inevitably, would have to reckon with the quiet, enduring power of the human species. The quiet tension surrounding the human Zorithian experiment began to shift into something heavier. Word of the human adaptability and the unexpected pregnancy had leaked, carefully, selectively, into parts of the Galactic Alliance. Among the various species, reactions ranged from awe to fear. Some envied humans, wondering if their own evolutionary strategies were inferior. Others whispered of potential dangers. If humans could surpass impossible biological limits, what else could they achieve? Within the Zorithian council chambers, debate had reached a peak. Elder Vashir, ever cautious, warned that the secrecy could not last. "We are walking a tight line," he said, his voice calm but firm. "Other species will demand answers. Some may react with aggression, others with envy. Humans are not the only species with ambition. If they sense advantage, they will take it." She understood his concern, but she could not ignore the truth she had observed. Humans were not aggressive in the same sense as other species. Their strength was subtle, built on endurance, intelligence, and adaptability. "We cannot suppress knowledge," she argued, her voice steady. "Hiding this will only create suspicion, fear, and potentially conflict. Humans are not a threat. They are an example, an opportunity for learning, for understanding resilience, for improving collaboration across the galaxy. They may not act out of malice, but what if their survival instincts conflict with our interests? Suppression will only lead to mistakes, misjudgment, and fear-driven decisions." Meanwhile, outside the council chambers, Eric Callan continued his work and observation. He remained largely unaware of the political undercurrents swirling around him. He focused on understanding the alien society, interacting respectfully, and learning the patterns of their culture. Yet humans were naturally observant. He sensed the tension, the quiet fear, and the admiration in the way the Zorithians conducted themselves. One evening, Lyra invited Eric to walk through the observation gardens. The alien city stretched below them, towers glowing softly with bioluminescent light. The air was thick with the scent of alien flora, and the hum of machinery blended with the natural sounds of the city. "The council is divided," Lyra admitted. "Some see your species as a threat, others as a lesson. I fear the tension is growing. I guess the galaxy will learn the same lesson, whether they want to or not. And that unsettles more of our people than I expected." This was precisely the kind of fear-driven action she had anticipated. Eric, calm as ever, assessed the situation. "Do they intend harm?" he asked. Lyra shook her head. "Not necessarily, but they act out of fear, envy, or suspicion. They want control. They want answers they cannot obtain through reason." Lyra and Eric reviewed the surveillance recordings together. The intruders had been highly trained, using subtle technologies to bypass standard systems. Yet they had failed, not through force, but through the humans' quiet observation and understanding of alien systems. Humans had an uncanny ability to notice patterns, anticipate actions, and adapt to unexpected circumstances. It was a natural skill honed over centuries of survival. "This is what I feared," Lyra said quietly. "Your species is underestimated by almost everyone. That is why they tried this, and yet you survived as always." "That's all." "They thrive not by conquering or exploiting, but by understanding and responding. To restrict them now would be both unethical and short-sighted. It would also demonstrate fear, a fear of something you do not comprehend." Visiting species were allowed access under strict guidelines, but their interactions were carefully monitored. As the days passed, the alien woman grew increasingly fascinated by human behavior. She noticed subtle patterns, the way humans collaborated without rigid hierarchy, how they communicated through small gestures and unspoken understanding, and how they persisted even in challenging circumstances. It was unlike any species she had studied. Humans did not rely solely on intellect or strength. They relied on endurance, observation, and adaptability, a combination that created a kind of quiet power. Lyra began to reflect on what this meant for her people. The Zorithians had perfected precision, control, and calculation, but humans excelled in uncertainty. They thrived where her species would falter. And in observing Eric and his companions, she realized that humans did not need to dominate, manipulate, or threaten to succeed. Their strength was in living, adapting, and enduring. One afternoon, Lyra and Eric reviewed the hybrid's progress. The early developmental scans continued to show remarkable stability. The fetus was thriving, responding to stimuli and growing at a rate that suggested extraordinary resilience. Lyra touched the controls lightly, her mind racing with possibilities. "Your species," she said softly, "is capable of more than I imagined. Not only do you adapt externally, but your biology compensates internally. You survive and thrive where others would fail. I have never seen anything like it." Whispers of human adaptability reached distant worlds, prompting curiosity, envy, and fear. Some species began their own studies, attempting to replicate human traits in controlled simulations. Others debated whether to limit human influence in political, scientific, or military arenas. Yet none could deny the underlying truth. Humans were exceptional, not because they sought to dominate, but because they survived where others would fail. Lyra found herself reflecting on the broader meaning of the experiment. Humanity's presence on Zorithia was not merely a biological curiosity. It was a revelation, a challenge to the assumptions of countless civilizations. It was a reminder that survival, intelligence, and resilience were not solely measured by technology, power, or precision. Sometimes, the quiet strength of adaptability and endurance was far more influential. Eric, for his part, remained unaware of the full political and social repercussions. He focused on observation, adaptation, and cooperation, human traits that had served his species well for millennia. In the controlled environment of Zorithia, these traits were now on display for the galaxy to witness. Humans thrived not because they imposed themselves, but because they understood, adapted, and endured. One evening, as the three suns of Zorithia set over the city, Lyra walked with Eric through the glowing observation gardens. The air was warm and filled with the gentle hum of alien life. "Your presence here," she said quietly, "has changed everything, not through force or calculation, but through endurance, adaptability, and understanding. The galaxy may fear it or they may learn from it, but they cannot ignore it. You endure, adapt, and thrive where others fail, and now the galaxy will see it too." And the humans themselves, unassuming as ever, would continue to teach this lesson simply by being who they were. In the quiet of the observation gardens, Lyra realized that her admiration for humanity was no longer purely scientific. She had witnessed strength, resilience, and endurance in its most fundamental form. And she understood with both awe and unease that the galaxy would never be the same. The city of Zorithia shimmered under the light of its three suns, casting long reflections across the bioluminescent towers and streets below. In the laboratories perched above the city, a sense of anticipation hung thick in the air. Weeks of careful observation, study, and speculation had led to this moment. The hybrid, the unprecedented outcome of the human Zorithian experiment, was nearing full-term development, and the galaxy's attention, though mostly concealed, hovered like a silent observer. Lyra Vesh moved through the laboratory with deliberate grace, checking data consoles and scanning projections. Every metric, every reading, every simulation confirmed the same astounding truth. The hybrid was not only stable but thriving. Its cells, a combination of human and Zorithian biology, adapted in real time, responding to environmental stimuli with precision and resilience. No anomalies appeared, no errors were detected. The species she had once considered the primitive humans had produced a life form capable of extraordinary endurance. Eric Callan stood beside her, watching the holographic projections as well. He remained calm, almost serene, though a quiet anticipation marked his features. Humans had faced uncertainty before, had survived disasters and conflicts beyond imagination, yet this moment was different. Here, the survival instinct of his species was coupled with something entirely new, a biological phenomenon that challenged the galaxy's assumptions. Lyra broke the silence. "It is almost complete," she said softly. "The development is stable, far beyond what our simulations predicted. The hybrid is strong, adaptable, remarkable." Observers from allied species had been permitted under strict protocols, all eager to witness this unprecedented event. Some spoke in hushed whispers, their awe mingled with unease. Others watched silently, recording every metric, noting every detail. Humanity had demonstrated adaptability, intelligence, and resilience in ways the galaxy could not ignore. Now it was time to see what it could create. As the hybrid's final developmental stages approached, Lyra reflected on the journey that had led to this moment. The initial experiment, intended as a theoretical test, had defied every expectation. Humans, whom her species had once dismissed as biologically primitive, had demonstrated strength, adaptability, and endurance on a level no one could calculate. More than that, Eric and his people had displayed traits beyond biology: observation, intuition, cooperation, and ingenuity. The birth, though not in the human sense, was a carefully guided process. Advanced alien medical systems monitored the hybrid's emergence, providing environmental adjustments, nutritional support, and precise control of conditions. The chamber glowed softly, filled with humming machinery and floating holographic displays. Lyra and Eric stood side by side, watching the final readings. "It is ready," Lyra said quietly. "We will witness the first moment of life." The hybrid's movements were precise, coordinated, and surprisingly confident for a newly developed life form. The scientists and observers gasped softly. Even the most experienced alien biologists had never seen such stability, adaptability, or immediate awareness. Every cellular function, every organ system, every response to stimuli confirmed a simple truth. The hybrid was not only healthy but extraordinary. Lyra's heart swelled with awe. She had witnessed something profound. Life that transcended expectations, life that challenged assumptions about biology, intelligence, and adaptability. Humans, she realized, were not merely participants in this experiment, they were catalysts for a new understanding of life itself. Eric reached out, placing a gentle hand near the hybrid, though careful not to interfere with the alien medical systems. "You'll be safe," he said softly. "You'll learn, survive, and thrive, just like humans always do." As the hybrid settled into a controlled environment, Lyra reflected on the broader implications. Humanity had proven more than biology alone. They had demonstrated endurance, ingenuity, and moral strength. They had adapted without arrogance, observed without interference, and thrived without aggression. And now, through this hybrid, the galaxy would witness the culmination of those traits in a tangible, living form. Outside the laboratory, political and social ripples began to spread. The Zorithian Council convened to assess the outcome and consider its implications for the Alliance. Some members were hesitant, fearing envy or misinterpretation from other species. Others saw opportunity, recognizing that humans represented a new kind of influence, not through dominance, but through example, adaptability, and collaboration. Lyra spoke before the council, her voice calm and precise. "The hybrid demonstrates something profound. Humans do not succeed through force alone. They succeed through observation, adaptation, endurance, and cooperation. This life form is evidence of a principle the galaxy has underestimated. That resilience and adaptability can be as powerful as technology, strategy, or calculation." Humans had shown that survival, intelligence, and collaboration were deeply intertwined, and that underestimated species could achieve results far beyond expectation. In the weeks following the hybrid's birth, humans and Zorithians worked together to study, nurture, and observe the child. Lyra found herself growing attached, not just scientifically, but personally. She watched as Eric interacted with the hybrid, his calm presence and quiet confidence teaching lessons beyond words. The human's influence extended beyond biology. It was cultural, ethical, and instinctive. Meanwhile, other species in the Alliance began to respond. Some sent delegations to study the hybrid under controlled conditions, others sent diplomats to negotiate shared research opportunities. Humanity's reputation had shifted from curiosity to respect, and in some quarters, awe. The galaxy had begun to recognize that humans were not merely survivors. They were innovators, teachers, and catalysts for understanding. The hybrid's development continued at a remarkable pace. Its cognitive abilities, physical resilience, and adaptability exceeded expectations. It responded to environmental changes with immediate adjustments, demonstrated learning through observation, and showed a natural curiosity that mirrored humans' own exploratory instincts. Every milestone reinforced the principle that humans in their essence were extraordinary. Lyra observed quietly, sometimes marveling, sometimes reflecting on her own assumptions. She had been raised to value precision, predictability, and control. Humans, she realized, thrived precisely where those values were insufficient. They adapted, they endured, they observed, and they succeeded. It was a lesson the galaxy would have to learn, and the hybrid was living proof. Eric, too, understood the significance. Humans had long survived through observation, ingenuity, and moral resilience. Now, in the controlled environment of Zorithia, those same traits were visible to the galaxy. The hybrid was not just a child. It was a symbol of human potential, a demonstration of what adaptation, cooperation, and endurance could achieve. Months later, as the hybrid grew and explored its environment, Lyra and Eric reflected on the journey that had brought them here. What had begun as a theoretical experiment had become a revelation, not just of biology, but of philosophy, morality, and survival. Humans had shown that extraordinary resilience was not dependent on domination or calculation, but on the quiet strength of adaptation and endurance. The galaxy began to recognize this truth, even if only slowly. Allies, rivals, and observers alike acknowledged that humans represented a new paradigm. They were not the most powerful by conventional measures. They did not possess the most advanced technology, the most sophisticated armies, or the most precise calculations. Yet they endured, they adapted, they thrived. And through the hybrid, the galaxy could see that essence manifest in tangible, living proof. Lyra often found herself watching the hybrid, noting the child's curiosity, intelligence, and confidence. It moved freely within the controlled environment, exploring, learning, and responding with an instinctive understanding of its surroundings. The combination of human adaptability and Zorithian precision had produced something remarkable, a life form capable of thriving in ways that challenged centuries of galactic assumptions. One evening, as the sun set, casting long reflections across the glowing towers of Zorithia, Lyra spoke softly to Eric. "Your species has changed the way the galaxy will see life. Not through force, not through domination, but through endurance, intelligence, and adaptability. That is extraordinary. It will continue to teach in ways we cannot yet predict. Humanity's strength is not in power, it is in the quiet, persistent ability to adapt and endure. And now, the galaxy will understand that lesson as well." It was the birth of recognition. Humanity's enduring essence, their quiet resilience, and their unparalleled adaptability had reshaped the galaxy's understanding of life, survival, and cooperation. As Eric and Lyra stood together, observing the hybrid thriving in its new environment, the galaxy itself seemed to acknowledge a simple truth. Humans were extraordinary. Not because they sought power or control, but because they endured, adapted, and persevered. And in that endurance, they changed everything. In the quiet glow of Zorithia's towers, under the light of three suns, humanity's lesson was clear. Survival was not measured by force or technology alone. It was measured by persistence, adaptability, and the courage to thrive against impossible odds. And through the hybrid, the galaxy would remember this lesson for generations to come. The humans had not only survived, they had transformed the galaxy's understanding of life itself. And the hybrid, the living testament of that truth, would grow, explore, and endure, carrying forward the extraordinary essence of humanity for the galaxy to witness. And in that moment, the universe seemed a little larger, a little more alive, and a little more full of possibility than it had ever been before. Humanity had proven that even the smallest, quietest act of endurance could echo across stars, civilizations, and time itself.